When blind picking your champion, you inevitably run into the trouble of facing some very difficult matchups, and Aurora is no exception. Hello and welcome. In today's video we will cover how to quote-unquote win unwinnable matchups. The reason why it's in quotes is because of course the harder the matchup, the more winning turns into surviving. But just because you're facing someone who has a high likelihood of winning against your champion doesn't mean they can't make mistakes on which you can capitalize. The lower the division, the more this is true, but the thing is the examples shown today are in some of the highest possible elo. So if I'm able to find opportunities to get solo kills and winning positions, you should have no issues doing that as well. Checking the catalog for today, we have matchups ranging from opponent favorite to literally the worst matchup you can get if you lock in Aurora, as long as you ban the actual worst matchup for her of course. So stick around till the end to watch the progression in difficulty and see how you can deal with each one of these champions. Starting off with a matchup that I've covered in the past, but since then Jayce's ideal runes and items have changed. He no longer goes for the tank build, and since last patch when Grasp got nerfed, it will probably fall off as a consistent option for him, especially in this matchup. The two preferred and valid setups that he can go for here are phasers and electrocute. In this game I'm facing pro player Venur. Hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a very good player with very good movement. Do not level up your Q nor E until you know the opponent's intentions. If he wants to play from afar with Q poke and auto attack here and there, start E and poke him down like this. The reason behind why you have a choice between Q and E is because Jayce, if he wants to, he can play for push control and be way more aggressive level 1. You need to match that with Q if it happens. Otherwise, you just get out-traded. But if he goes for the longer range approach like here, starting E is necessary since you can't go too deep in this matchup in general because you just get ON'd. First couple of waves, always keep an eye on who's going to hit level 2, level 3 first, since that will 99% of the time give the wave priority to that player. In this case, Jayce has too much push for Aurora to handle early, so I have to respect that. But that's totally fine. I'm going with the Comet playstyle and all I need to do is look for poke and to match his CS as good as possible. This way I'm keeping both up in farm and surviving in a counter matchup, but also at the same time fishing and setting up for a potential solo kill later down the line. There are upsides and downsides to having priority or not, but the important thing to remember is what is the ideal wave state for me to play around the game plan I have for the matchup. As long as the wave is not frozen on his side and I can either build up a slow push towards him or keep the wave on my side, I can keep poking him for free without giving him any opportunities to ON me. He is forced to step up, and as you can see, I held the wave and put an extra point in my E for more damage. That's because I don't need W, because I don't plan on giving Jayce an opportunity to ON me, nor do I think I'll need it to escape a jungle gank, because proper wave management will avoid that. Sure, I will need W in the near future, and I'll probably get it for my next level up, but the extra damage I get from E right now can be crucial. Even though this matchup is Jayce favored, early couple of levels are heavily contested and can go either way. Comes down to game plan and execution. As you can see, I'm patient with my abilities and waiting for the right time to use them. And yes, I do miss an ability here and there. The important part is to keep the pressure up and not miss too many abilities and not overstep when you're not allowed to, because if that happens, Jayce will absolutely overpower you and quickly turn the tables. You always want to think what is your opponent currently up to so you know what to do with the wave. Step up and look for him so you don't give him a free recall into teleport, since that can lead into an unwanted freeze. And Jayce eventually forfeits the fight for the wave and lets me shove it, which gives me an opportunity to go back and recall with tempo advantage. Now, here I chose to teleport, and there's two reasons for that. One, I haven't used neither one of my potions, so I won't have any sustained issues if I mess up a trade or two. If the early game didn't go as smoothly and I didn't have these potions, I would have actually kept the teleport here because I want to avoid volatile positions. And two, I want to be present in the lane as much as possible since I want to keep poking him and use the fact that I can match his early game. It's very important that you do this since this is a time in the game where you get to be oppressive in terms of 1v1. Notice how I'm posturing aggressively and at the same time trying to dodge his EQ. I'm constantly fishing for poke and not letting him get on top of me with melee form. One important fact to mention here is that his melee form gives him a lot of resistances, so if possible look to throw abilities at him when he has recently turned into ranged. As you can see, the extra damage that you get from this does add up. Eventually, Jayce feels pressure to ON me since he's losing the poke battle. The important thing to take away from this situation is to keep calm. I knew that I wasn't in danger because he had just turned into melee form, meaning that his range form is still on cooldown and he doesn't have enough damage to finish me off. This line of thinking lets me keep my flash, which is crucial to punish him later on for failing his assassination on me. I still need to play it slow and cautiously and try to shove in the wave and then look for something. The enemy jungler could be coming top right now, but keeping my flash also prevents me from dying, so it's very important that I still have it. And my opponent eventually overstepped, so I knew I could finish him out by closing off the distance. I've missed 1 minion worth of XP, so I couldn't get level 6 at the exact timer, which would have meant that I don't have to use my flash here. Either way, it ended up working out. Later on, I kept up the same game plan and built up a lead through it, resulting into a win in this game. Here's a small summary of the things to keep in mind when facing Jayce. If you want to watch the whole raw game or analyze other games of mine, you can get access to them by subscribing to my Patreon tier 2 or higher. I upload most of them there and you get access to other perks as well. Moving on to the next matchup, Ambessa. She is the first of the 4 horsemen of not beating the infinite dashes allegation. While she's not as oppressive as someone like Aurora or Yasuo since she has cooldowns on set dashes, especially early on, she has so many that you need to constantly double check if you're in her trade range, or lethal range as we saw earlier. The game plan is as follows. Beat her early game while she still has a lot of cooldowns on her abilities, and play around the 2 fundamentals in her kit. First, her Q2 deals double damage if you're the first enemy hit, so try to hide behind minions or dodge it at all costs because that's what will swing the trade to either side. Of course, dodging it is easier said than done, but you should attempt to either way. And the other very important part about her kit is her W. It's an extremely strong tool for trading and all winning, negates a lot of damage if she times it correctly, similar to Olaf or Garen W. The key to deal with it is to be aware of it existing and always thinking about it in your mind. Also, by anticipating it, you can go for a fast ability sequence so she can't expect and react to it. You can notice me doing it throughout this laning phase, or you can hold your burst for after so it expires because the shield honestly stays for a relatively short period of time. The same way Jayce depends on the player, Ambessa is no exception. You will encounter some very aggressive players in the early stages in your games, just like here, but the key is to call her bluff and honestly just accept the ON since Aurora does beat her early on face to face as long as you hit your abilities. Notice how I waited for her to be next to the minions before using my Q1. Also, I used Q2 before she could dash or flash from the pullback. Very important. Recognize who's getting the level 2 priority and play accordingly. Me being a range champion lets me play for it and push for potential lethal. I notice exactly when I'm about to hit level 2, so I step up. Pay attention to how I managed to finish her off though, by not using any ability. The reason is she could just flash my Q or E and live. I'm sure she was anticipating it, but by only using auto attacks, I was able to secure it. Sadly though, this kill wasn't too good because the wave didn't fully crash, which means the wave will push to me very slowly and I will end up bleeding some minions. That also means that I'm forced to teleport. This is the part of the lane where you need to be really careful, since when the wave is on their side, champions that can dash a lot can easily gap close and trade with you. I'm looking to keep my distance and go for max range poke, but of course trying to not overstep my welcome, especially since the enemy jungler can be topside. My jungler is pathing to top and the wave is eventually going to be very good for Naufiri to gank, and I am communicating it to her, but sadly she prioritized her raptor camp on the bot side, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's her decision. I will still look to make this difficult for Ambessa to crash and look for lethal on her even if my jungler doesn't look for a gank. Another important fact about Ambessa is that after she uses her dash, she needs to wait a bit of time before the next one because of her passive. She needs to land auto attacks in between abilities for maximum damage and energy efficiency, so look to wait for her to charge up an auto attack, then use your ability. She doesn't necessarily have to do it, but if she wants to win trade, she needs to. Ambessa's dashes are a lot less problematic than some of the other champions, but still, as you can see, if I miss one ability, she can quickly turn it into a favorable trade for her. So, good accuracy and idea behind skill shots is mandatory. I did give it my best to not let this crash happen, but sadly she was able to overwhelm me and forced to let go of the potential freeze. If I had done a better job at my ability usage and dodging her abilities, I would have maybe been able to do something. But that's why it's a rough matchup. You're not allowed to make a lot of mistakes. There was no way I could hold this wave with my current state, so I just opted for a neutral position. Later, after my reset, the wave is again pushing to me, so I have to be careful, playing around her trade range. I was doing my best to find a favorable trade, and I did. This time my jungler also wanted a piece of the pie. He saw the good wave state and came for support, of course, but to be honest, with the juicy trade I was able to find, if Naufiri didn't show up, I had a very good lane state anyway. I just had to find one more trade into ult and would have been able to punish her severely. The key was spacing and dodging as many of her abilities as possible. Of course, that was all fun and fine, but after the early stages of the lane is where the bad things start happening and why this matchup is really difficult. Even if you get a lead, 1v1ing Ambessa is still very hard if you're not careful. I managed to kill Ambessa one more time later on utilizing my ult, and this is where I learned something in this game. Even if Ambessa clearly uses her ult and dies in the animation, it goes off of cooldown anyway, so don't test your luck. But this also brings me to the most important advice I need to tell you about this matchup. Her ult is her strongest asset against you. You need to dodge it, otherwise she gets too much leeway to 1v1 you however she wants. Of course, it comes with the drawback of not being the easiest ability to land, so whenever she hits level 6, track its cooldown and constantly be ready to react to potential all-in from her with your W, your ult, or just dodging with regular movement. If the ult lands, you're probably losing the fight unless you build up a big enough lead early. That's why playing aggressive when you're allowed to is mandatory. But also, her ult is actually lower CD than your ult, so even if she doesn't kill you the first time, she has another window later on, so make sure that you pay attention to that as well. Think wisely when you're about to step up against her. And here's the summary for this matchup. Finally, Yasuo. This matchup is incredibly similar to the Aurora matchup, as you need to be very precise with your movement and wave management. But the reason why Aurora is more difficult, and I actually advise you to ban her, is because she has infinite sustain, and even if you get a lead versus her, you can't really do all that much with it. Versus Yasuo, if you have better movement, game plan, and accuracy, you can win the matchup and kinda be more impactful than him. But another very important thing to remember in this matchup is you need to be disciplined. This matchup offers almost no room for mistake, and you need to be very precise when you do make a move. For a game plan, I highly encourage you to let the wave push into you. But sometimes, like in this case, Yasuo's will let the wave push into them to try and play the long lane. So in this case, I have no option but to play with my minion advantage and look to brute force a crash. I highly encourage you to go with the Aerie page, since in this matchup you need all of the early power you can get to force crashes and actually trade back efficiently. This setup also allows you to have somewhat infinite mana and straight up go into Storm Surge for a first item. Notice how I'm using my abilities to guarantee the bigger wave and holding my Q2 in case he tries to jump on me. He waits for it to actually expire and then makes a move, but due to my bigger wave, I can push him out. And this is where I need to step up and look to harass him since I have the upper hand. But I whiffed my Q, and one Q miss is all it takes for him to actually win the all-in. It's that volatile. I tried to dodge as many of his Qs as possible, but fate had other plans. Luckily for me, I kept a cool head and was able to capitalize on his overcommitment. He really wanted to lethal me. The key takeaway here is I would have actually won the 1v1 if my Q had hit, since with the huge wave advantage and the early setup, it would have been too much for Yasuo to handle even with lethal tempo. But I wasn't kidding earlier when I said you don't get too much room for error in this matchup. Afterwards, I was able to keep my teleport since the wave was perfectly going towards me. This is the exact position where you want to keep the wave in general, since you don't want to let Yasuo to extend the trade, rather you get the free poke on him. In this case, enemy Yasuo went for a roam on mid lane, and while it kinda worked for them since they managed to kill one of my teammates, he's bleeding so many minions on top lane that it's overall not worth for the enemy team. I held the wave towards my side as much as possible, but eventually it turned into a soul push because it was too close to my tower. But that's okay since I managed to get a huge XP advantage on Yasuo, which I'll look to set up a kill with. Again, I'm going to use my big minion wave to overpower him. Notice how I'm playing around his passive, removing it before I use any abilities, but in this case he used Wind Wall and that ability has a huge cooldown, so if Yasuo is not careful here, I could look to strike. If the enemy jungler is here, I'm actually not in any danger as long as I take the wave as soon as possible, because that gives me my ult which I can easily escape with. The Yasuo actually makes a misstep and walks for a last hit. I managed to get a good chunk on him. I play it casually as if I'm not gonna go for lethal, and then I pulled the trigger. Now I might have overcommitted and tried to finish him off when he flashed out. I should have just backed off. But hey, there's a bit of greed in all of us, right? I zoned him out from as much CS as possible and then backed off. Afterwards, I teleported and looked to stop his recall, to make him lose even more XP and gold. Make sure whatever you do, you also hold the wave though. Sometimes you get frozen on and sometimes you freeze on the opponent. Good thing I'm literally ice. After I got back to the wave, he also has two choices now. Go back and lose a bunch or stay and attempt to outplay me. He chose the latter, which I can respect. But I won't let go of this freeze without someone going down. He swoops in and uses his wind wall, which gives me an opening to go behind it and look for a hit on him. I play it very patiently to make sure my Q hits, since I know that I have enough juice to finish him off, especially with the pullback. My W usage is also crucial, since I use it to kite in one direction and one the other, and I also play around his Q. Use all of your tools at your disposal. That was good enough to secure the victory. And this is the last summary for today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Any subscription, like, and comment is of course welcome. I also have a Discord channel that's open for questions and overall pleasant conversations. Link below. Wishing you all a good day or evening.